The station's docking mechanism clanked as it secured my transport pod. The pod's hatch slid open with a pneumatic wheeze, revealing the bleak interior of the arrival bay. I stepped out, my mag boots clicking against the floor. The station's gravity felt off, a reminder of our precarious position orbiting a cosmic monster, a black hole. "Dr. Kim?" A voice called out. I turned to see a man in a crisp uniform approaching. "I'm Captain Marcos Ortiz. Welcome to Horizon Station." I shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the tension in his jaw. "Thank you, Captain. I'm eager to get started." Ortiz nodded, his expression guarded. "We'll get you settled in quickly. The crew's been on edge lately. Your expertise is sorely needed." As we walked through the station's cramped corridors, Ortiz gave me a rundown of the situation. The crew had been here for months, studying the black hole's gravitational effects. Lately, they'd been experiencing shared dreams and visions. Some believed they were receiving messages from inside the black hole itself. "Sounds like a textbook case of shared psychosis," I remarked. "Isolation and stress can do strange things to the mind." Ortiz's lips tightened. "Perhaps. But there's something else going on here, Doctor. Something I can't quite put my finger on." We reached the lab, where I met Dr. Julian Lopez, the lead scientist. His eyes had a manic gleam as he shook my hand. "Dr. Kim, your arrival couldn't be more timely. We're on the verge of a breakthrough. I'm sure of it." I raised an eyebrow. "A breakthrough?" Lopez nodded enthusiastically. "The visions, the dreams, they're not random. There are patterns, equations. We just need to decode them." A loud bang echoed through the station, followed by a string of curses. Ortiz sighed. "And that would be Ryan Collins, our chief engineer. He's been working overtime to keep our systems stable." A man in oil-stained coveralls stormed into the lab. "Captain, we've got another fluctuation in the gravitational field. It's playing havoc with our stabilizers." Ortiz's face darkened. "Can you compensate?" "For now, yeah. But these anomalies are getting worse. We're flying blind here, Captain." I observed the exchange, noting the underlying current of fear in Collins's voice, the excitement in Lopez's eyes, and the weight of responsibility on Ortiz's shoulders. This was a powder keg waiting to explode. "Gentlemen," I interjected, "I think it's time we had a proper sit-down. I need to understand exactly what's been happening here." Ortiz nodded. "Agreed. But first, let's get you to your quarters, Doctor. You'll want to see this." He led me to a small viewport. As I approached, my breath caught in my throat. There it was, a swirling vortex of darkness, bending light around its edges. The black hole. It dominated the view, a cosmic predator waiting to devour everything in its path. For a moment, I swore I could hear whispers emanating from that darkness. Equations and fragments of code danced at the edges of my consciousness. I shook my head, forcing the thoughts away. This was precisely the kind of shared delusion I was here to study and debunk. But as I stared into the abyss, a small part of me wondered, what if Lopez was right? What if something truly was trying to communicate with us? I tore my gaze away from the viewport. Right, let's get to work. As I settled into my new home for the foreseeable future, I realized that my job wasn't just to keep the crew grounded in reality. I would have to expand my own understanding of what reality might entail when faced with phenomena beyond human comprehension. The station creaked around me, as if straining against the black hole's pull. I pulled out my tablet and began making notes, preparing for the interviews ahead. Whatever was happening on Horizon Station, I was determined to get to the bottom of it, for the sake of the crew, for science, and for my own sanity. A week had passed since my arrival on Horizon Station. I'd spent most of it conducting initial psychological evaluations, trying to get a baseline for the crew's mental state. The results were unsettling. I rubbed my eyes, staring at the data on my tablet. Sleep had been elusive. My dreams filled with geometric patterns and whispered equations. I dismissed it as stress, my subconscious processing the crew's accounts. But now I wasn't so sure. A knock at my door jolted me from my thoughts. It was Dr. Lopez, his eyes wild with excitement. "Dr. Kim, you need to see this," he said, practically vibrating with energy. I followed him to the lab, where several crew members were gathered around a holographic display. Captain Ortiz stood off to the side, his arms crossed, a deep frown on his face. "What's going on?" I asked. Lopez gestured to the display. "We've been compiling the dream reports from the crew. Look at this pattern." The hologram showed a complex, interlocking series of shapes and symbols. As I watched, it shifted, almost seeming to reach out towards us. "This can't be coincidence," Lopez continued. "The consistency across multiple subjects, the mathematical precision. We're receiving a message, Dr. Kim, from inside the black hole." I felt a chill run down my spine, recognizing elements from my own dreams in the pattern. "That's a rather extreme conclusion, Dr. Lopez. There are more plausible explanations." "Like what?" one of the junior scientists challenged. "Mass hallucination, some kind of space madness." "We can't rule anything out at this stage," I said carefully. "The human mind is incredibly susceptible to suggestion, especially under stress. We're in an extreme environment, studying an extreme phenomenon. It's natural for our brains to try to find patterns, even where none exist." Captain Ortiz spoke up. "Dr. Kim is right. We need to remain objective. This station's purpose is scientific study, not wild speculation." I could see the disappointment and frustration on some of the crew's faces. They needed to believe there was some greater meaning to their experiences. As the group dispersed, Engineer Collins approached me. "Doc, got a minute?" I followed him to a quiet corner. Collins looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "Look," he said in a low voice, "I'm an engineer. I deal in facts, in things I can measure and fix. But something ain't right here." "What do you mean?" "The gravitational fluctuations we've been experiencing. They're not random. There's a pattern to them, just like those dreams, and they're getting stronger." I frowned. "Have you told the captain?" "Yeah, but he's focused on keeping order. Can't blame him with half the crew turning into conspiracy theorists." Collins shook his head. "I'm worried, Doc. If these anomalies keep intensifying, I'm not sure how long I can keep our system stable." As if to punctuate his point, the station shook slightly. The lights dimmed, and for a moment, I felt weightless. "Shit," Collins muttered, already moving towards the door. "Gotta check the stabilizers." Left alone, I made my way to the viewport. The black hole loomed before us. As I stared into its depths, I could almost feel it staring back. The rational part of my mind railed against such fanciful thoughts. I was here to be the voice of reason, to keep the crew grounded in reality. But as I stood there, it was hard to ignore the feeling that our definition of reality might be woefully inadequate in the face of what we were dealing with. That night, the dream came again, but this time, it was different. The geometric patterns coalesced into a clear image. A modified schematic of the station's sensors. A voice, not quite human, whispered equations I shouldn't have been able to understand. I woke with a start. Without thinking, I grabbed my tablet and began scribbling down what I'd seen. It was only when I finished that I realized what I'd done. Staring at the drawings and equations on my screen, I felt a deep discomfort. I was no longer just an observer. I had become part of the phenomenon I was meant to be studying. Whatever was happening here, it was clear that traditional scientific methods might not be enough to unravel its mysteries. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. When I opened them, I made a decision. It was time to approach this problem from a new angle. If we were indeed receiving messages from beyond the event horizon, we needed to be prepared for the possibility that our understanding of reality itself might need to evolve. In the following days, I found myself struggling to maintain my professional detachment as the situation on Horizon Station spiraled further into chaos. It started with a routine psychological evaluation. I was interviewing Dr. Alvarez, one of the junior scientists, when his eyes suddenly rolled back in his head. He began convulsing, spouting a stream of complex mathematical formulas interspersed with descriptions of absurd technologies. "The singularity speaks," Alvarez gasped, his body contorting. "We must listen. We must evolve." Dr. Lopez was ecstatic when I reported the incident. "Don't you see, Kim? This is proof. The black hole is trying to communicate with us, to elevate us." I tried to remain skeptical. Or it could be a manifestation of extreme stress and isolation. But even as I said the words, I felt my conviction wavering. The visions I'd been experiencing were becoming more frequent, more vivid. I found myself scribbling equations I didn't understand in the margins of my notes, drawing schematics for machines that seemed to break the boundaries of known science. The crew was fracturing. Some, like Lopez, threw themselves into decoding the messages with religious fervor. Others, led by Captain Ortiz, desperately clung to protocol and rationality. And then there were those who simply shut down, overwhelmed by what we were facing. I tried to maintain order, to be the voice of reason. But I was fighting a losing battle. One night, unable to sleep, I made my way to the observation deck. Engineer Collins was there, staring out at the black hole with a look of fascination. "Can't sleep either, Doc?" he asked without turning. I joined him at the viewport. "How are the systems holding up?" "By a thread. The gravitational anomalies are getting worse. I've had to reroute power from non-essential systems just to keep life support running." He turned to me. "We're not equipped for this, Kim. Whatever's happening, it's beyond us." Suddenly, the lights dimmed and died, plunging us into darkness. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in a red glow. "I've got to get to engineering," Collins muttered, already moving towards the door. I followed him out into the corridor, where panicked crew members were rushing about. Captain Ortiz's voice came over the intercom, trying to restore order. As I helped direct people to safety, I caught sight of Dr. Lopez. He was standing still amidst the chaos, a look of rapture on his face. "It's happening," he whispered as I approached. "We're on the threshold of something magnificent." A violent tremor rocked the station. I lost my footing, slamming hard against a bulkhead. As my vision dimmed, I saw a glimpse of a reality beyond our own, geometries that shouldn't exist, beings of pure energy reaching out across the void. I came to in the medbay, surrounded by the groans of injured crew members. Dr. Ortiz was there, looking haggard. "What happened?" I croaked. "We barely managed to stabilize the station," Ortiz said. As I lay there, I realized that my role had shifted. I was no longer just an observer, a therapist trying to maintain the crew's sanity. I was a participant in whatever cosmic drama was unfolding around us. "Captain," I said, sitting up despite the pain, "I think it's time we seriously consider Dr. Lopez's theories." Ortiz's eyes widened in surprise. "You can't be serious. You're supposed to be the rational one here, Kim." "Rationality only gets us so far when dealing with the irrational. Whatever's happening here, it's beyond our current understanding. If we're going to survive this, we need to expand our minds." Ortiz was silent for a long moment. "All right, Doctor, what do you suggest?" The decision to embrace Dr. Lopez's theories marked a turning point for Horizon Station. What began as cautious scientific inquiry quickly spiraled into something intense and unpredictable. Lopez's lab became the epicenter of our efforts. We pored over the data from our shared visions, cross-referencing them with the station's sensor readings and the increasingly unpredictable gravitational anomalies. "Look at this," Lopez said one day, gesturing to a holographic model. "The structure of these equations. It's like they're describing a form of matter we've never encountered before." I leaned in, my scientific skepticism warring with a growing sense of awe. Could it be dark matter? Lopez shook his head. No, this is something else. Something that exists beyond our current understanding of dimensionality. As we researched deeper into the mystery, the station itself seemed to react. Systems malfunctioned in ways Collins couldn't explain, and crew members reported experiencing time differently in certain sections. I swear I spent an hour in the mess hall, one technician told me during a routine checkup, but when I checked my watch, only 5 minutes had passed. These temporal anomalies became more frequent, more pronounced. We began marking off sections of the station as temporally unstable, creating a patchwork map of areas where time flowed differently. The crew's reaction to these developments varied wildly. Some, like Lopez, threw themselves into the research with almost manic intensity. Others retreated into themselves, overwhelmed by what we were discovering. And then there were those who saw something divine in our circumstances. A cult began to form, centered around the belief that the black hole was a sentient entity trying to elevate us to a higher plane of existence. I found Technician Cooper one day, kneeling before the viewport, murmuring what sounded like prayers to the void beyond. "Cooper," I said gently, "what are you doing?" He turned to me, his eyes feverish. "Can't you feel it, Doctor? It's calling to us, showing us the way to transcend our limited existence." I tried to reason with him, to offer psychological explanations for what he was experiencing, but my words seemed to bounce off him. As I watched him turn back to his vigil, I realized with a sinking feeling that I was losing my grip on the crew's mental state. Captain Ortiz was equally concerned. "This can't go on, Kim," he said during one of our increasingly frequent meetings. "We're scientists, not cultists. If we can't get this under control, I'll have no choice but to abort the mission." But aborting was easier said than done. The gravitational anomalies had intensified to the point where leaving our orbit might be suicidal. We were committed now, for better or worse. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine sensor adjustment. Dr. Lopez was overseeing the process when something went catastrophically wrong. I rushed to the lab to find Lopez standing transfixed before a swirling vortex of light and shadow that had appeared in the center of the room. The rhythm it gave off was from beyond, causing a spinning effect for anyone who made eye contact. "My God," Lopez whispered. "It's a portal, a gateway to somewhere else." Lopez reached out towards the anomaly. The moment his fingers touched its surface, he let out a scream that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. His body contorted, stretching and twisting as he was pulled into the vortex. In a flash, both Lopez and the portal vanished, leaving behind nothing but a scorch mark on the floor and the smell of ozone. The lab erupted into chaos. Some crew members panicked, while others stared at the spot where Lopez had vanished with horror and fascination. As I tried to restore order, I caught sight of my reflection in a darkened screen. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. My eyes were wild, my hair disheveled. I looked like a man on the brink of madness, and perhaps I was. Because despite the terror of what I'd just witnessed, a part of me thrilled at the implications. We had opened a door to somewhere. The question now was, what would come through? We could no longer pretend to be dispassionate observers. We were part of something vast and terrifying, and our only hope of survival, of understanding, was to embrace it fully. In the wake of Dr. Lopez's disappearance, Horizon Station descended into a chaos that was both intellectual and spiritual. The remaining crew fractured into 3 distinct factions, each with its own vision of how to proceed in the face of the incomprehensible. I found myself caught in the middle, trying to maintain some semblance of unity while grappling with my own evolving beliefs. The visions had become more intense, more frequent. Equations and alien geometries danced behind my eyelids every time I closed them. Captain Ortiz led those who wanted to abandon the research and leave. "We're not equipped for this," he argued during a heated meeting. "We're scientists, not interdimensional explorers. We need to cut our losses and return to Earth." Collins surprisingly sided with Ortiz. "The station can't take much more of this," he warned. "These gravitational fluctuations are tearing us apart at the seams." On the other side were those who, like the now absent Lopez, wanted to push forward with the research at any cost. Dr. Alvarez, who had recovered from his earlier episode, had taken up Lopez's mantle. "We're on the verge of unlocking the secrets of the universe," Alvarez insisted. "To turn back now would be a betrayal of everything we stand for as scientists." And then there were the believers. The cult that had formed around the black hole had grown, its members convinced that the anomalies and visions were messages guiding us towards some cosmic ascension. Technician Cooper, now the de facto leader of this group, approached me one day. "Dr. Kim, you've seen the truth. You know we can't leave. We're meant to be here, to transcend our limited existence." I listened to all sides, weighing their arguments against the experiences we'd shared. In the end, I made a decision that surprised even myself. "We stay," I announced to the assembled crew. "But we proceed with caution. We'll continue our research, but with new protocols in place to ensure our safety." Ortiz was furious. "You're condemning us all," he spat. "Maybe," I conceded. "But we have a responsibility to understand what's happening here. If we leave now, we might be turning our backs on the most important discovery in human history." As we set about implementing new research protocols, the station continued to change around us. Temporal anomalies became more pronounced. Entire sections of the station would experience time at different rates. We had to institute a buddy system to ensure no one got lost in these time-warped zones. Collins worked to keep our systems functioning, but it was a losing battle. "It's like the laws of physics are breaking down," he told me one day. "I fix one thing, and two more break in ways that shouldn't be possible." Despite the challenges, we made progress. Alvarez's team managed to recreate the conditions that had led to Lopez's disappearance, generating small, stable portals. We couldn't send anything through them yet, but the readings we got from them were revolutionary. "It's like looking into another dimension," Alvarez explained, his excitement obvious. "These portals are windows into realms of existence we never knew existed." But for every breakthrough, there was a new problem. Crew members reported increasingly vivid and disturbing visions. Some claimed to have conversations with beings of pure energy. Others insisted they could see through time itself. I did my best to document everything to maintain some semblance of scientific rigor. But even I was changing. My dreams were filled with vistas of alien worlds and whispers of cosmic truths. One night I made my way to the observation deck. The black hole was right in front of us, a tear in the fabric of reality. As I stared into its depths, I felt a presence behind me. I turned to see Cooper and several other cult members. They wore robes adorned with symbols I recognized from our shared visions. "It's time, Dr. Kim," Cooper said softly. "We've received the final message. We know how to cross over." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Cross over? What are you talking about?" Cooper smiled, a serene expression that was somehow more terrifying than any show of fanaticism. "The black hole isn't just a phenomenon to be studied. It's a gateway, and we've been chosen to be the first to step through." As he spoke, Collins's voice came over the intercom, panic in his tone. "Multiple hull breaches. Gravitational forces are off the charts. We're being pulled in." I watched in horror as Cooper and his followers calmly walked towards the airlock. "Wait!" I shouted, moving to stop them. But as I reached out, my hand passed through Cooper, as if he were made of smoke. He turned to me one last time, his form already beginning to dissipate. "Don't fear, Doctor. This is just the beginning." The airlock opened, and instead of the vacuum of space, I saw a swirling vortex of light and shadow. As Cooper and the others entered, their shapes extended and twisted in surreal manners before vanishing without a trace. I ran towards the bridge. We were about to cross a threshold that would redefine humanity's place in the universe, and I was determined to see it through. The scene before me was pure chaos. Consoles sparked and smoked, Emergency lights bathed everything in a hellish red glow, and the view screen showed the black hole's maw yawning ever wider before us. Captain Ortiz was working at the navigation controls. "Kim," he said when he saw me, "we're caught in the gravitational pull. I can't break us free." Collins's voice came over the intercom, distorted and breaking up. "Structural integrity failing, can't hold much longer." I grabbed onto a nearby console to steady myself as the station shuddered violently. "Ortiz, listen to me. We can't fight this. We need to go with it." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. "Are you insane? We'll be torn apart." "No, this is what we've been preparing for. All the visions, the anomalies, they were leading us to this moment." The view screen flashed, displaying surreal geometries and flashes of alien landscapes. Reality seemed to be unraveling around us. Ortiz's features displayed a clear sign of distress and capitulation. "So this is it? We just let it happen?" I nodded, reaching out to grip his shoulder. "We're about to go where no human has gone before. We need to face it, head on." Just then, Alvarez stumbled onto the bridge, his eyes expressing terror and exhilaration. "The equations!" he gasped. "They're solving themselves! I can see it all now. The unified theory, the nature of reality itself." The station groaned, metal twisting in ways it was never meant to. The black hole filled our entire field of view now, its event horizon a curtain of light and darkness. "Brace yourselves!" I shouted as we approached the point of no return. Time seemed to stretch and warp. I saw flashes of my life, of possible futures, of realities that never were. The boundaries between past, present, and future blurred and dissolved. And then we crossed the threshold. The sensation was indescribable. It felt like being torn apart and put back together simultaneously, like every atom of my being was being rewritten. I saw colors that had no name, heard sounds that shouldn't exist, felt sensations I can't describe. Through it all, I clung to my sense of self, to the mission that had brought us here. I reached out, trying to connect with the others, to anchor us in this sea of cosmic madness. I'm not sure how long we existed in that state of flux. Time had no meaning in this realm beyond physical laws, but gradually a new awareness began to coalesce. I opened eyes I no longer possessed and beheld a universe transformed. We were no longer flesh and blood, but beings of pure energy and consciousness. The black hole that had consumed us was now a gateway, a nexus point connecting realms of existence I could barely comprehend. Around me, I sensed the presence of the others: Ortiz, Collins, Alvarez, even Cooper and his followers. We were connected now in ways that transcended physical bonds, our thoughts and experiences merging and separating in a cosmic dance. As my new consciousness expanded, I began to understand. The black hole wasn't just a gravitational phenomenon. It was a crucible, a place where matter and energy were broken down and reshaped into something new. We had been drawn here, prepared through our visions and experiences to undergo a transformation. But with this new understanding came a terrible realization. We had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. There was no going back to our old lives, our old forms. We had become something other than human. I reached out with my mind, connecting with my former crew members. Their thoughts and emotions came over me: fear, awe, exhilaration, despair. We were pioneers on the edge of a new frontier, but the cost had been higher than any of us could have imagined. As our collective consciousness expanded, the initial shock of our transformation gave way to a profound sense of disorientation. We were no longer bound by physical form, our perceptions stretching beyond the limitations of human senses. The universe unfolded before us, a kaleidoscope of energy and information. I felt Ortiz's presence nearby, his thoughts a maelstrom of fear and wonder. "Kim, what are we?" A flood of images engulfed us. I saw the Horizon Station from multiple angles simultaneously, watched as versions of ourselves moved about its corridors in various moments of time. It was as if we were viewing a film of our lives, but with the ability to focus on any point, any perspective at will. "We're everywhere," Alvarez's thoughts interjected. every moment we've experienced. It's all happening at once. As we grappled with this new perception, I became aware of a persistent echo, a familiar presence that seemed just out of reach. Focusing on it, I gasped in shock as I recognized myself. Not the energy being I had become, but my human form, still aboard the station, still orbiting the black hole. "Do you feel that?" I projected to the others. "It's us, our past selves." Collins's consciousness was struck by confusion. "How is that possible? We're here, but we're also there." As we collectively turned our attention to this phenomenon, a startling realization began to take shape. We weren't just observing our past. We were connected to it, existing in a state of quantum superposition. We were simultaneously the ascended beings we had become and the humans we once were, straddling the boundary between past and present, matter and energy. We could perceive the entirety of our journey, from the first anomalous readings to the moment we crossed the event horizon. Every decision, every fear, every breakthrough. It was all laid bare before us. "We've become unstuck in time," Alvarez mused, his scientific curiosity evident even in this strange new form. "The black hole didn't just transform us. It freed us from linear existence." As we explored this new ability, we found we could focus on specific moments in our past with incredible clarity. I watched myself in those early days aboard the station, saw the skepticism in my eyes as I dismissed the first reports of shared dreams. The irony was striking. But with this newfound perspective came a heavy ethical quandary. If we could observe our past selves, could we also influence them? The debate raged through our collective consciousness. "We can't interfere," Ortiz argued. "The paradoxes alone could be catastrophic. We might prevent our own ascension." "But what if this was always meant to happen?" I countered. "What if the messages we received, the visions that guided us, what if they came from us all along?" The idea was a tantalizing and terrifying possibility. Had we always been destined to guide ourselves to this point? Were we merely fulfilling a predestined loop in the fabric of space-time? We had the knowledge, the understanding of what awaited them. Could we, in good conscience, withhold that guidance? "I think we should try to make contact," I finally proposed. "Not to change the past, but to ensure it unfolds as it should. We can be the guiding hand that we always thought was something else." The others mulled over my words, their reactions a mixture of concern and curiosity. Alvarez's thoughts crystallized, projecting clearly to the group. "The equations, the visions. We could encode our knowledge, send it back in fragments. It's how we received the information in the first place." A sense of purpose began to coalesce among us. We had been given this incredible ability, this unique perspective on our own existence. Perhaps it wasn't just a quirk of our transformation, but a crucial part of the process itself. We prepared to reach back through time, to become the very force that had shaped our journey. We were about to close a loop that spanned the boundaries of space, time, and consciousness itself. Our first attempts to reach back through time were met with frustration. Our new abilities, vast as they were, proved difficult to focus and control. We sent out thoughts, fragments of equations, flashes of imagery, but they seemed to dissipate in the cosmic void. "We're too diffuse," Ortiz's essence vibrated with irritation. "We need to concentrate our efforts." Gradually, we learned to coalesce our collective consciousness, to direct our will with precision. Slowly, we began to make contact. I felt a surge of triumph as I watched my past self jolt awake from a dream, scribbling equations he couldn't possibly understand. Collins's consciousness flared with recognition as we witnessed his former self experience a moment of inexplicable clarity while repairing a malfunctioning system. "It's working!" Alvarez's thoughts rippled through us. "We're shaping our own past." As we observed the impact of our interventions, I was struck by the cruel irony of our situation. We watched our past selves struggle with fear and confusion, knowing full well the turmoil that awaited them. The temptation to reveal everything, To spare them the anguish of uncertainty was almost overwhelming. "We can't," Ortiz reminded us. "Too much knowledge too soon could derail everything." He was right, of course. We had to walk a razor's edge, providing just enough guidance to ensure our ascension without altering the course of events that led us here. We learned to encode complex information into simple forms, geometric patterns in dreams, subtle gravitational fluctuations, fleeting moments of intuition. Each message was a brushstroke in a vast cosmic painting, meaningless on its own but part of a greater design. The process took its toll. Reliving our own experiences from this new perspective was emotionally grueling. I sensed Collins's essence falter as we watched his past self break down under the strain of maintaining the station's failing systems. Alvarez's consciousness dimmed as we witnessed the moment of his greatest doubt, when he nearly abandoned the research that would prove crucial to our transformation. Was it worth it? Ortiz's thoughts carried a weight of uncertainty. All this suffering, just to end up here. The question hung in the void between us, a challenge to everything we had become. As I grappled with an answer, I felt a shift in our collective perception. Our focus narrowed, honing in on the critical moment of our transformation. We watched as our past selves approached the event horizon, their faces a mix of terror and awe. With exquisite precision, we made our final adjustments, a subtle shift in the station's orbit, a pattern on a sensor readout, a fleeting thought of reassurance. As one, we watched ourselves cross the threshold. The station stretched to its breaking point, and then transformation. We had done it. The loop was closed. In that moment, I understood. The suffering, the fear, the doubt, it had all been necessary. We hadn't just been guiding our past selves, we had been shaping ourselves, forging our consciousness in the crucible of that harrowing journey. We are our own creators, I projected to the others, the realization spreading through our shared awareness like ripples in a pond. We had transcended not just our physical forms, but the concept of linear existence. We were at once the observers and the observed, the teachers and the students, Alpha and Omega. So what now? Collins's essence radiated with curiosity. Do we just keep reliving this loop forever? The questions sparked an array of possibilities. We had mastered our own timeline, but the universe was vast. How many other forms of life might be out there, grappling with their own existential questions? How many other realities might exist, parallel to our own? We explore, I suggested, feeling a swell of excitement ripple through our shared consciousness. We've been given this gift of perception, of understanding. We use it to seek out new forms of life, new manifestations of consciousness. The idea took hold, growing and evolving as we collectively shaped it. We were no longer bound by the constraints of physical form or linear time. The entire cosmos was open to us, a vast playground of possibilities. As we prepared to embark on this new journey, I felt a sense of completion. We had solved the mystery of our own existence, closed the loop of our creation. Now, we stood on the brink of an even greater adventure. The black hole that had been our crucible now seemed like a mere stepping stone. Before us stretched the infinite expanse of the universe, teeming with wonders yet to be discovered. We were no longer human, no longer bound by the limitations of our former existence. We had become something new, something that straddled the boundaries between matter and energy, time and eternity.